all the time. Powered by Arkansas, for Arkansas. The John Nabors Show is live from the Natty State Sports Studios.
And welcome into the John Nabors Show here live from Natty State Sports Studios. Appreciate each and every one of you listening in and watching in on this beautiful day here in the great state of Arkansas. I am your host, John Nabors, and appreciate each and every one of you for making us a part of your afternoon this afternoon. It's a lovely Thursday out there, folks, and I'm going to be honest, this is going to be a little bit of an abbreviated Razorback discussion here on the John Nabors Show because I actually have a pretty big VIP event, hanging out, trying to make some moves and everything here tonight. But yeah, I mean, it's still going to talk about a lot because it's kind of slow right now, but still a lot of things to discuss, and we'll get into all of those things. And again, appreciate each and every one of you listening in and watching in. I wanted to discuss some things because here's the deal. It's like whenever I go into content and I start thinking about things that I want to talk about, that doesn't always mean that everybody else wants to. That's kind of been the whole challenge in my entire career, essentially, is trying to figure out, okay, what do people want to talk about? And is it things that I can talk about? Is it things that people want to hear from me? Like what can it be? What is it? All of that, and try to relate to it. But one of the things, though, that I actually had a really interesting discussion with a few of you listeners the other day was when we were speaking about Razorback Basketball and John Calipari. We've really just dived into every nook and cranny there is as far as breaking this down. And, of course, Pot at the Palace, being able to put things together and talking about players that pop and players that get added to the roster and everything like that. It's been really interesting and fascinating to me to be able to see just the momentum and how it slows down a little bit, but then it picks right back up if something big happens. But no matter what, it's moving forward, and it's always going to have some sort of momentum that people are going to be excited about. But at the end of the day, with all this excitement, with all of these people who can't get enough of Razorback Basketball and John Calipari, which I'm kind of the same way, there's the biggest elephant in the room when it comes to that is because of the expectation that comes along with it. No one's getting excited about uncertainty. Now, there is a level of uncertainty when it comes to every sports season because you never know what's going to happen. I mean, I could point to dozens of different examples in Razorback sports history where going into a year, you thought the team was going to be terrible, ended up being good, or vice versa. Probably more often you thought they were going to be good, ended up being terrible. So there's always a level of uncertainty in everything. There's no 100% guarantee. But when it comes to excitement and joy and energy, it's always going to be about a high expectation. That's where it comes from. And sometimes it'd be more things other than most. But with basketball, more so than football, more so than baseball, basketball has the largest expectation in front of it. Okay, John Calipari is your head coach. John Calipari's put together a phenomenal roster. And John Calipari understands that in order to do the things that he's been trying to do and wanting to do and to be able to win another national championship, which, he can talk about what his goal is or what his not goal is or whatever, but getting guys to the pros and winning a championship, to me, is what is most important and also what should be most important to him. He's always been about the players. He's always been very open about that. He's like, hey, I want the players to succeed. I want them to succeed under me and everything. And I respect that. I appreciate that. I cherish that. All of that stuff. So, don't get it twisted. But fan-wise, and what goes on with it is about winning. And winning at a high clip and a high level. I think back to when Eric Musselman got hired, because that's the most recent example we have in basketball. Think about what your expectation was heading into that first season. You had Mason Jones and Isaiah Joe back on the team, which they look pretty good as true freshmen in Mike Anderson's final year. But, really didn't know how much they were going to grow or how much they were going to get better. You had in a few transfers like Jimmy Witt, which I remember how unconscionable it was that, wait a minute, a guy that was at Arkansas previously is now back? He transferred back to Arkansas? Weird. But you had him. You had Gental Silla. I don't know if anybody remembers that guy. He transferred in. Then you throw in some other randoms, like guys that you had back on the roster. Reggie Chaney, rest in peace. You had him on the team. You had Adrio Bailey, another player that was on the team. And Connor Vanover was one of the guys that transferred from Cal, but he was not eligible to play, which basically threw it out there. And when you looked at the roster, you're like, holy crap, we got a guy that is 6'7" at best, and he's going to be playing post. And that was kind of what Adriel Bailey was. I think Reggie Chaney was also in that mix too. But still, knowing that the uncertainty of like going into it where you had a lot of new players, you had some players from the previous team, but knowing that your tallest guy was 6'7" and it was a new coach, the expectation was kind of like, ooh, okay, well, we're hopeful. You know, maybe this team can be competitive. Maybe this team can do something. And I think all intents and purposes, they ended up winning 20 games that year. They went 7-11 in the SEC, and they went 0-5 in the games in the SEC that Isaiah Joe was hurt in. Not saying they would have won all those games, but they had a lot of close calls. And there was a game I'll never forget. It was on the road against LSU that year. As LSU was a good team, but Arkansas got out rebounded by like 19. May have been more than that. It was a ridiculous amount, like 30. I don't know. It was just so much, and Arkansas only lost by 2. So it's like, man, to get out rebounded by like only lose to 2. Like they're right there. They're on the cusp, but they're just missing a few pieces. But still, everybody going into that year felt like the expectation was, hey, just hopefully put some things together, manufacture some things, and we'll see how it plays out. And I thought they did a pretty good job. And then the next year, of course, the expectation, because Razorback fans had gone so long without going to a Sweet 16, but you had one of, if not the best recruiting class in the country. You brought in Moses Moody. You brought in KK Robinson, Jalen Williams, Devo Davis. You had that. You had some big-time transfers come in. A guy like Justin Smith was huge. You also had a guy like Connor Vanover finally eligible. And then you had also returning guys like Desi Sills. You also had Vance Jackson, who had transferred in too. So there was just some other players that came in, and because of the big-time high school class and knowing that you were going to have at least one and done on that team, the expectation was not necessarily to go to the Sweet 16. It was to be a really good team. And that was kind of the ultimate test for Muss. It's like, okay, you've put together the team, you put together the roster, you put together what it looks like. So what do you do with it is the key. But once he'd established himself as being a coach that can get Arkansas not only to the NCAA tournament, but also to advance far into the NCAA tournament, the expectations continued to elevate. Listen, I would have loved before the year started and that first Elite 8 run for Eric Musselman to go into the year and be like, okay, I'm expecting an Elite 8. This better be an Elite 8. If it's not an Elite 8, I'm going to be mad. But I didn't. I was like, man, okay, just get to the tournament and have a good year and we'll see. Because it's been so long. Then at that point in time, that was in 2021. Is the 2020-2021 season. They had not been to the Sweet 16 since 1996. We're talking about the first, President Bill Clinton was just starting his second term. It was insanity how long it had been. And so knowing all of that, it just changed once you got to that point, your expectation. Now, fast forward to right now with Calipari. Arkansas, under Muss, as we know, 3 straight Sweet 16s, 2 Elite 8s. Hey, it was there. It's proven. It's there. That's the expectation. And knowing that Cal, even though he had some struggles over the past few years at Kentucky for not making the NCAA tournament, at least advancing very far in the NCAA tournament, I should say, there's been kind of a shift. But now, knowing that Arkansas is not like this cursed program that they just can't get by the Sweet 16 because of reasons. Now knowing that Cal, who has proven time and time again of how many times he's been to the Sweet 16, the Elite 8, the Final Four, national championship, and knowing the type of roster that he's put together with the great players, we talked about it with the number 1 recruiting class, the number 1 transfer class, the number 6 recruiting class, it feels like, okay, now the expectation is elevated even more so. And dare I say, that the expectation now for Razorback basketball is as high as it's been since the mid-90s with Nolan Richardson. Think about that. Eric Musselman did a great job at Arkansas, but I don't even think that he had the expectation of what people are planning on to get from Cal. Muss did a great, at least I felt this way, that, hey, as long as Arkansas and Eric Musselman get to the NCAA tournament, all bets are off. Say what you want about Muss. I still respect Muss. I still love Muss. Say what you want about Muss. But when Muss got to the NCAA tournament, he just knew. He just knew how to do it. It's almost like an art that you can't really like put together. Arkansas never made it to the Final Four or anything like that, but considering the circumstances, in the first year they made it to the Elite Eight, they lost to the eventual champion Baylor and, got down big, but gave them all that they wanted towards the end. And then Baylor won the national championship. The next year, they lost to Duke, but they beat Gonzaga, the best team in the NCAA tournament, the number 1 overall seed. They beat them. And then next year, we know they beat Kansas. And Arkansas was an 8 seed. They barely got into the NCAA tournament. They were 10th in the SEC. And going up against a really good Kansas team, the defending champions, they beat them. So and then, of course, lost to UConn, who everybody lost to UConn because UConn was another animal. I still feel like that year after they beat Kansas, they had to play anybody else besides UConn. They probably would have gone to a Final Four. That's just my opinion, but that's how I feel. But still, you think about the great runs that Arkansas went on those years and how difficult it is. And that's why I'm always going to be appreciative and respectful of Muss, because that is such a difficult thing to do. But even knowing that was the feel, right? Hey, just get to the NCAA tournament. Do good enough in the regular season, but just get to the tournament and let's see how it goes. It would have been nice to be a 1 seed. It would have been nice to win the regular season in the SEC or the SEC tournament. Sure. Like there would have been a little bit of extra, things to add in there and to hang a banner for, I guess, if you would have won those, but it didn't matter. It didn't matter to me and it didn't matter to Razorback fans. All that mattered was getting to the tournament, because if you got to the tournament, then you felt like you had the coach, you had the players, and you had the ability to be able to play your best and be your best in those situations. And that's what I always will remember. But Cal, who's done a lot of that and has, there's no question, his resume speaks for itself. People might be a little bit, not weary, but interested in how he's going to do something differently at Arkansas than maybe what he's done at Kentucky. Because Kentucky is a program we all know is really good, one of the best, can't really beat it, but there's also an element of, hey, is this kind of fading off? Is the shine fading off of Cal? Whether you want to admit it as a Razorback fan or not, there is an element of that. But we'll talk about that here in just a second. Folks, I got to tell you about our friends over at Hopper Termite and Pest. It is that year. I was out and about today, and I was just getting littered, like just mosquitoes and flies and everything. Hopefully it wasn't because of how I smelled. But, that's just me walking around and walking rowdy my dog and just getting hit with them. I was like, man, this is annoying. But I'm outside. There's nothing worse than when you get hit with some of that stuff and you're inside your own home. And you're just like, where are these flies coming from? Where are these spiders coming from? Where are these ants coming from? It's a mess and it's annoying. Well, luckily for you, they have the solution for you with Hopper Termite and Pest. If you have any of these issues, and we're talking about any type of critter and rodents, roaches, mosquitoes, anything, they can destroy your property and cause some health problems for your family, which is something that none of us want. So with Hopper Termite and Pest, they're going to take care of you. They're going to make sure that they have their true and tried solution put to the test, and it is going to be eradicating many of the common pests and works for many weeks. And you will not have to worry about it again, and even in the rain, because it's safe, secure through that, which we could probably use a little bit of rain right now. But even during the rain, you're going to be good to go there. So check them out today. They are the pest company to be able to take care of that when it comes to termite and pest control. So give them a call today at 479-750-4070. That's 479-750-4070. You can also visit their website at callhopper.com. That's www.callhopper.com. But when you do, be sure to mention Natty State Sports, because when you do that, you get $50 off your first treatment. They're the best. They're going to take care of you, and we appreciate them being a partners of his here at Natty State Sports. So again, check them out today. It's Hopper Termite and Pest at 479-750-4070. And be sure to use promo code Natty for $50 off your first treatment. Okay, so we're talking about Arkansas and Kentucky and, with Cal and the angle and like what's the expectation and everything. But as much as it's fun to kind of poke fun at Kentucky fans and then they get into the chat and they start saying, good luck with this, blah, blah, blah. Do I think that Cal is toast, is cooked, is at the end of his rope, can't coach, can't do anything anymore? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But let's be honest with ourselves. There's always going to be a possible likelihood that he loses in the NCAA tournament first round. Even if Arkansas has a great year this year, ends up being one of the first or second teams in the SEC, goes far in the SEC tournament, maybe they end up being a 2 seed, 3 seed, something like that. There's always going to be an element of the possibility that, what if they face off against a team like an Oakland or a St. Peter's? Like one of those teams where it's like they really want to win it. They really want to beat it. And it just is unfortunate. And it happens. There's always that likelihood. There's always that possibility. But you can't think of that as a Razorback fan because you want to think positive. You want to think optimistically and everything. But the expectation, as much as Kentucky fans may disagree, the expectation at Arkansas is for Cal to do something and to take what Muss was able to do to another level. I've said this before. If Arkansas does not make it to at least the Sweet 16 in his first year, it'll be a disappointment. Obviously, you want to go further. Obviously, there's a chance you go further. Obviously, but I'd like to think that Razorback fans are pretty reasonable enough that they're like, hey, we may be good enough. You have the talent. You may have all the things that you need, but there's still always that chance that someone gets upset. I mean, folks, they're talking about Hall of Fame coaches, the greatest of coaches to ever coach college basketball. They all have bad losses in the tournament. I mean, I remember when Duke was the number 2 seed, Coach K, and they lost to a team called Lehigh. It's like, what? Who? Kansas, one of my favorite games because he had one of the coolest names with Bill Self was when they lost to Northern Iowa and Ali Farouk Manesh. I'm like, how? How did they do that? The greatest and best programs of all time have always had upsets. I mean, shoot, the last time UConn was lost in the NCAA tournament under Danny Hurley, they lost to New Mexico State and Chris Jans. So ask yourself, who would you rather have as a coach, Danny Hurley or Chris Jans? Well, Who would you rather have as a team, UConn, New Mexico State? But my point is that there's always going to be things that just happen in the tournament. That's why it's March Madness. And it's not something you want to see often, and you hate it, but I always will go back that Arkansas has been a very great beneficiary of what could have been worst case scenario, but actually they really haven't been upset in the NCAA tournament in a really embarrassing way. I mean, you think about it. What was a game that you look back and was like, oh, that was embarrassing? Because I even asked this question on Twitter once, and somebody's like, oh, when we lost to Bucknell and Ronnie Brewer's year. I'm like, okay. So the worst loss you can think about in the NCAA tournament was an 8-9 seeded game where you lost to Bucknell by 2 points. And the first time you had been to the NCAA tournament in years. That's the worst. Never you were 2 seed. You almost lost to 95 when you were the 2 seed. And you almost lost to the 15 seed. So that was pretty close. But, I mean, you've not had those you haven't had like the Kentucky St. Peter's in your history or, like the Duke and Lehigh. You haven't had that. So it would be kind of a new feeling to ever experience that. And hopefully Arkansas doesn't. But I bring all that up is because the expectation is, okay, well, you'll take care of business against the teams you should. You should. And think about this, because this is a scenario we got to think about. But think about this. Think about that if Arkansas, with this great team, these great talented players, these great everything, they win 30 games in the regular season. Like, say if they won the SEC regular season and they were like a 1 or 2 seed in the NCAA tournament. Do you have any clue the amount of excitement in the fever pitch that people would have for all things Razorback basketball? Could you imagine going into, whatever place they get placed, hopefully it's relatively close and somewhere Arkansas fans can go to, but like the just absolute mind-blowing excitement of like, oh my gosh, we haven't had a regular season like that since Nolan Richardson. We're a 1 seed or a 2 seed. I'll just say for the sake of arguments, a 2 seed, highest seed you've been in decades. We have a team that won 30 games. We got these talented guys like John L. Davis is averaging 20 a game. Like it would just be at a fever pitch. And then you lose. And then you lose to a 15 seed. All of that excitement, all of that buildup, all of that energy that you poured into, all the games you went to, all of the things that you just couldn't get enough of. You kept talking about, kept thinking about, kept talking, like just discussing with everybody, watching every single game, enjoying those big wins, all of that, done. Folks, there's no going back and be like, well, that was a good year. No. you're going to look at it as a disappointment. If you need any case of that, just look at Arkansas baseball this past year. They were, the fifth overall seed, so that would be like a 2 seed in the NCAA tournament in basketball. And look what happened. Were you disappointed? I'd say so. So you would be disappointed. So the case becomes, and the question becomes of Cal. Like, what's legitimate your expectation? Because what if that happens? What if you have a great year? What if you have everything going on? What if you are able to move forward and have some of the great success on the court, as well as the excitement that, you're living up to your expectation of what you think should happen? The players are playing great. You got All-Americans. You got lottery picks. You couldn't, everyone's talking about you. Hey, this Razorback team, you're getting picked into the NCAA tournament. Everyone's like, filling out their brackets. Like, man, I like Arkansas. You hear from ESPN on their bracketology deal that the majority of fans have picked UConn as the 1 seed, but the team that got the second most votes has been Arkansas. Like, you're going to be beside yourself. As will I. As will everybody. But what if that happens? What if it just all comes crumbling to an end against a team you're better than, and a team that you should have beat? What happens? Well, tell you what, we'll talk about that here in just a second. But folks, I got to tell you about our friends over at L Jennings Law. We all need lawyers. We all need to make sure that we're having everything taken care of and protected when it comes to some of our legal matters. But hey, just like in sports, though, preparation is key. And at L Jennings Law, they understand that more than anybody. They've been specializing in estate planning, including crucial documents like wills and trusts and powers of attorney and healthcare directives, and that they ensure that your family is protected and provided for no matter what comes your way. So don't leave your future to chance. Contact L Jennings Law today and create a plan that is comprehensive as well as it is comforting for all of you. You can call them today at 501-501-WILL. That's 501-501-9455. You can also check out their website at ljenningslaw.com. But no matter what it is, when it comes to all things, whether it's trust, business planning, elder law, everything, do it with L Jennings Law at 501-501-WILL. That's 501-501-9455. So what happens? What happens if you have that type of year, if you have that type of season, if you're a Razorback fan? How does that all come crumbling down? What does it feel like? What does it see like? What all of it? Well, it sucks. Plain and simple. It sucks. And all you're going to hear about is from Kentucky fans who knows, maybe they don't even make the NCAA tournament. They're still going to crow about like, yeah, that's what you get. That's what you get. You thought it was going to be all great, grand, and wonderful with Arkansas, and look what you got, folks. You got the Cal that we all know and love, and then you're going to get mad. You're going to get frustrated. You're going to be like, all this stuff. But here's the deal. None of that matters. None of that matters. It doesn't matter what other people say. What matters is giving yourself a chance. Giving yourself a chance to win a national title, compete for a national title. And I can't remember any single time that any coach has ever regretted being the number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament or a number 2 seed in the NCAA tournament. When they're like, you know what, that was great and all because we had such a great regular season, but man, I feel like we probably should have been a 6 seed. No one's ever going to say that. You know why? Because teams, coaches, players, everybody, they want to be the best in everything. Best in recruiting, best in facilities, best in roster, best in talent, best in coaching, best in like atmosphere, best in everything. No matter what it is, they want to be the best. And you'll never find anybody worth their salt that regrets being a high-seeded team because of how much success they had in the regular season. Because they lived up to that expectation. They earned that. They earned that seed. They earned that high rank. They earned it all. And so nobody's ever going to say, I shouldn't have done that. Shouldn't have been that seed. No, what they're going to say is, dadgummit. That stupid team and all those like 6'6", bunch of white senior guys that hit threes all over the place. Like, that's annoying. Like, that's how it's going to be. It's going to just be like, sucks. What do you do? And you're going to hear about it. But the difference is, folks, is the reason you're going to hear about it is because of what the expectation is. Not just for you, but for everybody else. If Arkansas ends up being one of those high-seeded teams, nobody's going to look at them and be like, oh, yeah, they're trash. They're crap. They didn't deserve it. They needed to be like an 8 seed. No one's going to say that. And when you lose, if you lose to a team like a 15 seed or an 11 seed or whatever it is, And people are just going to be like laughing at you and talking trash and all this stuff. You know why they're doing that? Is because they expected you to do better. Just like you did. And when you failed, they wanted you to hear about it. Because they expected you to be better. They expected you to be great. They expected you to go the right direction. And when you don't, they're going to be like, oh, okay, so now we got to hear about it. Got to make ourselves feel better. I'm not saying that to just be like, the haters. I'm not trying to say that. And I'm not trying to do that to you guys. But I'm just telling you that the expectation is there for everybody. Not just for Razorback fans, but for everybody. Kentucky, they can say whatever they want. But they're expecting you to be a great team in the regular season and to get to the NCAA tournament as a high seed. That's what they're expecting. So if you get to the tournament as a high seed and you lose in the first round, you're going to hear about it. But what if you are a high seed, have a great regular season, and then you make it to the Sweet 16, Elite 8? You're not going to hear a thing. And if you do, it's because they're just trolling. But you're not going to hear anything. Why? Because that's what they expected you to do. When you fall short, people are going to be right there to let you hear about it. But when you follow through, when you handle your business, when you get to the point to where you're like, hey, we wanted to go further, we wanted to be greater, but we did something that's difficult that only a certain amount of teams do, you're going to hear crickets. So just keep that in mind. It's great to have the expectation. It's great to think that this team under Calipari in year one is going to blow up and be awesome. I'm going to have that expectation. I mean, look at the roster right now. Like, look at the schedule that you're putting together. We'll know what it ends up looking like fully, but I don't think there's any reason to believe that Arkansas will not be one of the top 4, top 5 teams in the SEC when it's all said and done. And who knows? Maybe they'll be the best. Who's really to say? There's so much newness to it, right? So much newness to Cal, newness to what he's trying to accomplish and everything. But I'm telling you right now, Razorback fans, have expectations. Have high expectations. That's not unreasonable. Anybody that tells you otherwise is because they're losers. Let the losers worry about losing. Quoting T.I. But have expectations. This Razorback basketball team could be disappointing. It could. But they're going to be disappointing because you, me, and everybody expect the best. Expect elite. And if you don't have that expectation and you're just like, I just hope all the teams have fun. If you don't have that expectation, you're just pissing in the wind. You're not going to ever have a program, and never going to have a team, and you're never going to have that demand that's like, hey, you got to do something. Kentucky fans, what you say what you want about them or whatever, but they have an expectation there, and Cal fell short of that expectation over the past few years. But here's the deal. He met that expectation, and I'm going to just put it right to you, just like we've all kind of talked about, but wouldn't you trade Kentucky's success as a basketball program over the past 15 years to Arkansas's, even as great as Muss's was and everything? Like, would you not trade the past 15 years that Kentucky had with Arkansas's past 15 years? Absolutely, you would. So, if you have the best team, if you have one of the most talented teams, if you have John Calipari, if you have the support, if you have the facilities, if you have everything that you need to be great, what's the holdup? What's the problem? There isn't one. It's up to you to execute it, John Calipari, but it's not unfair for Razorback fans to believe that it is going to be better than ever. I'm stoked about basketball season. Like, I'm going to be excited about football. I'm going to be excited about what could happen and things that could transpire. Like, don't get me wrong, I will be, but man, basketball, I just am so tickled to see like what it's going to turn into, and knowing that like everybody's going to be watching it. And football season doesn't go well, everyone's going to shift to it. It's like, all right, basketball, what's going on? What's John Calipari doing? What tie is he wearing? Is he wearing a suit? Is he wearing a quarter zip? Oh, look at that player. Oh man, he went for 40. Like, it's just going to be fun to follow and fun to be a part of and fun to see how it all goes down. But speaking of fun though, folks, I got to tell you about our friends over at BroThrow at BroThrow.com/Natty, Natty, BroThrow.com/Natty. It is the place when it comes to taking on bets in sports against your friends. against people, real actual people. Because how many times have one of us gone with our buddies and said, hey, man, like, I bet you $5 that so-and-so team wins tonight. And they're like, oh, yeah, you're on. Well, of course. Yeah, that happens all the time. But it's nothing official. It's not easy to do. It's like, okay, well, man, yeah, I guess I can Venmo you something or whatever. Like, but there's no way of doing it, and there's no way to kind of go through the rules and all that. Well, anyways, with BroThrow.com/Natty, you can do that. It's a web app that when you get online, you can see all the different spreads from all different games, whether it's money line, over, unders, and spreads as well. For instance, the NBA Finals, it's 3-0 Celtics. Hate to see it. But if you go on BroThrow.com/Natty, you can see that right now the Celtics are favored by -1 against the Mavericks in Game 4. Well, if James has bet $50 on the Mavericks at +1, but hey, you're like, no, man, Celtics sweeping this thing. Well, then take the bet. Take the bet for $50, and when you end up winning, which I'm sure you will if you bet the Celtics, but when you end up winning, it's a very simple thing. You got Cash App, you got Venmo, you send a request, they send it over to you. And the app and the web app here at BroThrow makes it really easy to do. So you got to check it out and get to winning some money and have some fun with it too. If you go to BroThrow.com/Natty, you'll be able to win some money and have some fun and be a part of the Natty State sports community that we're building on there too, to go up and bet some things against some people, and you save a ton of money in the juice. That's the thing, is the house is not something that BroThrow is doing where they're like, oh yeah, we're taking all this big cut. No. You save a ton of money in the juice. So do it today. It's available in most states. It's free to sign up. You must be 21 years or older and get to winning some money at BroThrow.com/Natty. That's BroThrow.com/Natty.
1, 2, 3, let's go!
All Natty, all the time. Powered by Arkansas, for Arkansas. The John Nabors Show is live from the Natty State Sports Studios.
All right, so we're moving on into the next segment of the John Nabors Show, and I did want to talk a little bit about recruiting, because recruiting is always something, right? And, people have been so obsessed with basketball and the recruiting there, but Arkansas did get at least a little bit of good news today in the football side of things, as they had a commitment from this man right here, Cash Courtney. Cash with a K. Like, how cool is that? There's always cool names that go out there, but Cash with a K, it's pretty cool. I think Rohan will always be one of my favorite names, but that's neither here nor there, but still. But Cash says, quote, on his Twitter, X, whatever, says, after lots of prayers and long talks with my family, I have decided to decommit from Baylor and commit to the University of Arkansas. I want to thank Coach Aranda and Baylor community for the support and for the love shown throughout the process. And he has a picture of him holding a Razorback football, saying he has officially committed. Now, he is an offensive lineman who, if you're wondering what the connection was, Eric Mateos was at Baylor previously, and they were able to swing him and to get him over to Arkansas at this point. Now, Cash Courtney, he has committed to Arkansas, but he also had some other offers too into the list. He's a offensive tackle set up there. So, again, offensive lineman, though. I feel like if it's a tackle, if it's a guard, if it's a center, it doesn't really matter. They're going to find a place for him, and if he ends up being one of the better offensive linemen, they're just going to put him in place. But he's from Carthage, Texas. He's part of the 2025 class, 6'4", 265 pounds. So definitely going to have to gain some weight there on the good weight. That's important. But he's a 3-star player. He's the number 97 offensive tackle in the country. And he chose Arkansas, of course, over Baylor, Duke, Houston, and Louisiana Tech. Now, here's the thing, is like when I see this, I'm like, okay, yeah, good get, trying to add some depth. And, it's worrisome sometimes if you see a recruiting thing go down and people are doing recruiting, and a place like Arkansas with Sam Pittman's like, okay, well, is he dead in the water? Is he going to be even doing anything? Because, if this year doesn't work out, how much can you recruit? And how much is the recruiting class going to reflect if they're like, hey, coach, I love you and I'd want to play for you, but I don't know, man. Are you even going to be here next year? Like, that's a conversation to have. That's something that, kind of needed to be addressed, and it may be something that you have to overcome and deal with. But still, if you got somebody like this guy, like some people are, 3-star, blah, who cares? I care. Folks, you got to be able to recruit freshmen or incoming freshmen out of the high school ranks while also doing transfer portal stuff. You got to do both. You can't just run and hide. You can't just ignore it. You can't do any of that. You got to do both. And Arkansas is in a really peculiar situation. I was trying to think of the last time that Arkansas has had a deal where it's basically dead man walking mentality from some of the fans, which, again, I don't know how much that is the case. But where a coach has almost, worn out their welcome and they're coming off a losing season and they're kind of in their final year, like there's just a lot of curiosities. Because say what you want, like with Brett Bielema, for instance. Yeah, he went 4-8 in his last year. He went 1-7 in conference play and he got fired. He got fired before he even walked off the field, which is still a crazy thing. And, Jeff Long was fired. That was just all a mess. But still, the year before that, Arkansas went 7-6. And they should have gone, honestly, 8-4 in the regular season, but losing to Missouri, which was terrible in the final week of that year, and then getting smoked, of course, by Virginia Tech after blowing a halftime lead. You finished 7-6. So people were frustrated, mad, angry. I know I was kind of like teetering on like whether or not I actually thought Bielema was the guy. But still, it was like, okay, well, at least you had a winning season. You just screwed up there in the end. Get it back. You're going to have Austin Allen back. You're going to have Raleigh Williams back. Like, you're going to have all these players back. Like, maybe you can salvage it. Maybe you can make it work. Well, it didn't happen, as we all know. But going into that year, it wasn't like, shoot, this team ain't good. This team ain't they're going to go 4-8. Like, there was not that mentality. And if I'm wrong, I'm sure some of you will correct me because you'll be like, I said it. Good. But overall, from what I remember, there wasn't that type of feeling. It was more of, all right, got that out of your system. Hated that year, hated that season. It didn't end well. Let's just move on. Let's just do something better. Let's get something going here. And when all that happened, it was like, okay, Bielema, you got to go, move on. But it was really that last year that was the problem. Well, with Pittman, it's like first year solid, but COVID, it's kind of weird. But the second year is great. And then since then, it's been down and down. If Arkansas and Sam Pittman, everything would have gone 7-6 last year, say, for instance, say if they finished it in the same way, where they were 7-5, they lose to a bad Missouri team at the end of the year, and they lose their bowl game in weird fashion, they finish 7-6. Would there be people upset? Yes. Would there be people mad? Yes. But if you coupled that with adding in Bobby Petrino and new offense, new everything, people would be like, all right, we were close. We should have done this. But now this is going to set us over the edge, and now there's no reason why we can't win this amount of games. Like, that would be the difference. But almost every year, you think about that, Chad Morris was a joke no matter what. I mean, that guy didn't even make it 2 seasons. So I don't even think you can really justify that one because there was no positives from it. But Houston Nutt, even in his final 2 years, went 10-4 and 8-4, technically. Petrino, 21-5. Danny Ford was maybe the last example where Arkansas had back-to-back losing seasons, and it was all she wrote in 96 and 97. My point is that it's been a long time since you had any sort of issues of like just being candid, but just any sort of issues of major problems of the team not performing, not being good, coming off of a losing season and the coach still being around. Like, again, I know Chad Morris came off a losing season, but 2 years is not it. Like, Brett Bielema came off a losing season his first year, but then improved. Bobby Petrino had a losing season his first year, but then improved. Houston Nutt started up at the top where he was doing great, but then he kind of slowed down and went over. Point is like, this is a new territory. This is kind of a new feeling where it's almost confusing. It's like, you want to be excited because you love football. We all love football. And we know that there's the Petrino angle, and we know that the offense is going to be improved. At least we think so. It should be, if Petrino has anything to say about it, which I think it will be. You have a lot of new players. You've moved on from some that you felt like maybe weren't, the ones that you needed, and you got the ones that you needed. So, there's reasons to kind of be excited, but there's also reasons of like, well, no one's talking about us. No one's looking at the Razorbacks of being like, oh, this team, watch out, guys. They could really be a spoiler this year. You didn't have like some big splash transfer that just blew the doors off everybody. You didn't have that Drew Sanders, or didn't have that, Dwight McLaughlin that was just like, whoa, okay, they got him? Whoa. And that's not an insult to any of the players that are transferring in or anything. It's just reality. You don't have splash. You don't have energy. You don't have the thing. It's like, everyone's like, ooh, watch this. This Arkansas team could be it. And so, is it good? Is it bad? Does it matter? It doesn't. It really doesn't matter. But the point is going back to the whole reason I started this about Cash Courtney and the offensive lineman and the 3-star and everything. it shows that the staff is still trying, for one, and trying to recruit, but also that there's something that Cash believes in that Arkansas is offering him. Maybe it's Mateos. Maybe it's as simple as that. Maybe he just really, really, really likes Eric Mateos. But think about how that has to go. Well, Coach, I know, and I appreciate you, and you're the reason I committed to Baylor, but if I commit to Arkansas, how am I even going to be sure that not only are you still coaching there, but the head coach is there? I don't want to coach for or play for anybody else. Why would I commit to you if it's just going to be a 1-year deal and then you end up leaving? Well, here's how. Transfer portal. It's not ideal. It's not what you want it to be. But players are smart. They understand. They're like, hey, I can go here. I want to go here. But even if the future is a little bit in doubt, something goes wrong, I can just go to the transfer portal. There it is. Done. Set in stone. So if they do that, then it gives them a little bit of leeway. It gives them a little bit of freedom to where, hey, if it really, really does go bottom up, then you have an option. You have a choice. You have something that you can do. And with me, with Cash Courtney and how I'm looking at him, I think he has options, and he could use that options. But I'm still, again, appreciative of Sam Pittman and the staff. Still trying to recruit. It's not going to move the needle for everybody because they're going to see a 3-star player and be like, oh, okay, whatever. But still, at least feels good for that. At least looks good for that, and at least you hope they continue on with that too. I got to tell you, folks, about Alumni Hall, though. We always are big fans of Alumni Hall. You're looking for the ultimate Razorback shopping experience? Well, look no further. Because at Alumni Hall, they're always going to have the greatest and best apparel you could possibly ever ask for, and they always are going to have it directly for you. If you walk into their store at 3417 North College Avenue, you're going to see exactly how great it looks, how great everything is, and going to see just an inordinate amount of different apparel options for men, for women, for children, for kids, pets, everything. I mean, it's all over the place, and there's not a better place to go when it comes to your Razorback shopping needs. So check them out in Fayetteville. But if you can't do that, because I know a lot of our audience, you're worldwide. You can't exactly just pull up into Fayetteville randomly and buy you a new Razorback shirt. Well, that's okay, because if you go to nattystatesports.com/alumni hall, that's nattystatesports.com/alumni hall. If you go to that website, you can see their entire catalog right there for you. And you can have it ordered and shipped directly to your door. So check it out today at nattystatesports.com/alumni hall. That's nattystatesports.com/alumni hall, the ultimate Razorback shopping experience. So we're talking about football and talking about recruiting and talking about the future and everything like that. I wanted to throw this little caveat in there too, folks. But, I have looked at what Razorback football has been able to accomplish under Sam Pittman. Good, not great. Solid, but not what, because it's teetering. It just feels like it could go either way. It could really go either way. We talked about expectations in basketball and how high they are, and rightfully so. But if any of you have high expectations in football, then I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what you're watching. I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what you're, paying attention to, but there's really no reason to have high expectations for football this season. Not as a program. That's not what I refer to. I'm just talking about this season. There's no reason for it. But there is reason to expect that this team is going to go to postseason play, to go to a bowl game, to win more games than they lose. That is a fair expectation, and that is an expectation that should never be too far-fetched and something that should never happen at Arkansas. Arkansas should always, always, always be a program that is going to postseason play, going to a bowl game. For crying out loud, it takes you to go 6-6, all right? Sometimes 5-7, depending on if your grades are good enough. You should go to a bowl game every single year at a place like Arkansas. I'm not expecting a national championship, but it should be at least going to Memphis, going to Houston, going to Birmingham. I don't care, but you better at least win 6 games. So that should be the expectation, the floor of the expectation for this season in Razorback football. But after that, what is it? Should that just be, because what if they go 6-6? What if they go 6-6 and Sam Pittman stays on and everything? How excited are you going to be about the next season? What's going to be your element? Okay, well, we went 4-8, but then we went 7-6, even if you won the bowl game. Are you going to be like, all right, cool. Yeah, we're going in the right direction. Everything's going to be great. Guess it would depend on your transfer portal class. It would depend on your recruiting. It would depend on how the team looked, especially in those losses that they had. Was it close? Was it competitive? Was it looking good? Or was it just a mess and you just got really bad teams that you played and you didn't really look good in them? Not every 6-6 season is created equal, but it is a season that if you don't get some sort of momentum going, things are really going to get out of hand and things are really going to change. You got to have excitement for your programs. You got to have energy for your programs. And Arkansas, whether you like it, hate it, love it, disagree with it, whatever it is, they just haven't had the energy. They haven't had the juice. I mean, when was the last time that Arkansas had juice to their team? It was probably coming off of that 9-4 season and heading into the next year because Arkansas was honestly like preseason highly ranked. And I know people may forget about this, but that year in 2022, the schedule was so absurd. So absurd. People may not understand that because you're coming off of that year, right? And it was a great year, a solid year for Arkansas. Like the first time you ever had a 9-win season since 2011. And so you felt really good about it. You're like, okay, now we're returning KJ Jefferson. You're returning, you lost Traylon Burks, but you still got a lot of other really good players too, like all this stuff. And then they throw the SEC's like, okay, so you got that schedule. Let's give you something here. Let's throw you something. All right, you're going to play Cincinnati, first game of the season at home. I know that you scheduled these, but Cincinnati's coming off of the first time a team in the non-Power 5 is in the college football playoff. They had a playoff appearance the year before. You get to play them. Great, at home. Then you play South Carolina, a team that a lot of people are expecting to be good, a team that actually ended up going 8-4 that year. You play them next at home. Then you play Bobby Petrino in Missouri State. We all know how difficult it was for that. And then you get A&M. Then you get Alabama. Then you go on the road to Mississippi State. Then you go on the road to BYU, which I don't care what anybody says. BYU is a team that always is a force to be reckoned with. And then you play on the road against Auburn. Then you have Liberty at home, who's coached by Hugh Freeze. And then LSU, Ole Miss at home, and then at Missouri. Folks, think back to that schedule for a second. I already mentioned about Cincinnati and South Carolina. Missouri State with Bobby Petrino. A&M is A&M. You still had Bama, Mississippi State with Mike Leach, BYU on the road. That's tough. Auburn, you did win that game because that was Brian Harsin on his way out. But then you faced off against Hugh Freeze. So against Missouri State, you faced a former SEC coach that was incredible in Bobby Petrino. And then against Liberty, you faced another former SEC coach that was incredible. Luke Fickell, you faced an amazing coach that was going to be vying for a Power 5 job. And you faced him and you faced Ole Miss. Like, you just had so much going on that year. But there was still excitement. There was still juice. And honestly, if Arkansas, they went 6-6 that year in the regular season, it started off so well. Started off so great and kind of fell apart there. The A&M game, as we all know, kind of is where it really started to go off the rails. The fumble return the fumble return for a touchdown. Arkansas was about to go 21-0. Instead, they go 14-7. They end up losing by 2 points. Doesn't matter. It's spilt milk. But the point is you had some expectations and some excitement for that year. And you don't have it this year. Or you may not have it this year. But I'm telling you, the schedule is tough, but it should be a lot feasible than what it was in 2022. You have some really tough SEC teams, but you do get those games at home. You do have Bobby Petrino. You do have some excitement in that regard. But I am just looking at it to where, okay, if Arkansas can just make it interesting, just give us something to enjoy, give us something to look at, give us something to think about, then I think I'll be fine with it. I think Razorback fans will be fine with it. I think everybody will be pretty happy. But they got to do their part. They got to take care of business. They got to make it happen. And until they do that, it's really hard to say one way or the other where it's going to go. But still, got a lot of time to think about that. But folks, you also got to think about who you're doing banking with. And with Signature Bank, you got to get yourself taken care of and get your banking done with Signature Bank, because there are so many reasons to bank with them, whether they're being personally invested in everything that it is you do when it comes to your finances. They're business-minded, they're community-focused, they're right-sized, they're forward-thinking. They're everything that we want to be here at Natty State Sports, and that's why we love doing business with them and doing banking with them, because they have it all. When you go in there, you're treated like royalty. You're treated exactly the way you need to be treated when it comes to your finances. You want to feel protected. You want to feel like you're in a place that is going to always look out for your best interest, and Signature Bank is going to do that for you. They were born right here in Fayetteville. Like many of you, like many Arkansans, they were born and bred right here in the state of Arkansas. They're Arkansans themselves, and they always want to make sure that they take care of you and take care of everybody involved when it comes to Signature Bank. So check them out today. You can go to their website at www.signature.bank. That's www.signature.bank. To see more information about them, you can also pop into one of their convenient locations here across the Northwest Arkansas area. But no matter what it is, when it comes to your finances, whether it's your personal finance or business, always do it with someone that you trust, like we do at Natty State Sports. It's Signature Bank at signature.bank.
All Natty, all the time. Powered by Arkansas, for Arkansas. The John Nabors Show is live from the Natty State Sports Studio.